We got breaking news on United, and Phil LeBeau is in D.C. with it. Hi, Phil.
Tyler, United Airlines, because of falling demand as more people have to deal with the effects of the coronavirus outbreak, United has decided it will be dropping its schedule by 20% on international flights starting in the month of April. It will be reducing its domestic flight schedule by 10% in the month of April. In terms of whether or not we see these reductions hold in May, international is likely because it goes out a little bit further in terms of people booking flights. May domestically remains to be seen. The way that United is doing this internationally, some wide-body planes will be parked on those routes. They will be reducing the number of times they're flying into certain areas. So they're not out-and-out cutting routes, but they are going to be flying them less frequently. And that's the same thing that will be happening with their domestic flights as well. Two other pieces of news from United Airlines. It is going to be offering employees unpaid leave of absence. Employees, depending on what unit of the company they work in, they will apply for an unpaid leave of absence. United believes that there will be a number of employees who will take advantage of this and take an unpaid leave of absence. At the same time, the company has announced it is putting into effect a hiring freeze. And we've already seen that take effect in terms of the next class of pilots that they plan to bring in for training. Now this is going to be across the entire company. So once again, guys, this is because they're seeing reduced demand out there, especially on the international side, especially when you're talking about those trans-Pacific flights. So as a result, they are reducing their schedule by 20% internationally, 10% domestically. That's for the month of April. Guys, back to you.
You know, Phil, we had an airline analyst last hour who was recommending a lot of these stocks because he thinks in the long term the picture hasn't changed, the landscape hasn't changed, and that falling jet fuel prices will provide some cushion. I'm sure that's true to some extent. I guess the question is not even so much about United Airlines, but what this anecdote tells us about what's going to happen across the economy, because slowing hiring, unpaid layoffs, I mean, these are the kinds of measures that, frankly, are why economists have taken down their GDP forecast for the year.
Right. And when you look at the airline industry, this is completely about people either not having confidence about taking a flight and either going to a meeting, going to some kind of a festival or an event, whatever it might be, or they're being told by their company, you know what, you're not going to a particular event. I was talking with an analyst yesterday. That analyst said they were told by their company, nope, you're not going to that investor day, you're not going to that investor day. So some cases, many people are being told, you can't fly right now. That's the case with the corporate travelers to a large extent. On the leisure side, it may be a case where people are saying, okay, let me rethink whether or not we want to go to a particular event or a particular venue for something that we were planning on doing. That's what the airline industry is dealing with right now. And the question becomes, how long will it take until the confidence is there, until companies say, you know what, you can go back out on the road? Will it be a month, 2 months? Largely, that depends on what happens with the containment of coronavirus.
What is interesting here also to me, Phil, is that hasn't United already canceled a lot of its international flights to and from Asia into China? So this is, they're not going there already. This is on top of that.
Well, overall, in terms of what their schedule was, it's going to be a reduction of 20%. And a lot of that is China, as well as some of the other markets that they mentioned in the last couple of weeks that they're doing flight reductions. We're talking about Seoul, South Korea, Japan. And Japan right now, guys, ANA announced that they're bringing down the number of domestic flights just within Japan for ANA because of a drop in demand. So there are other factors here. It's not just a United States and a U.S. Airlines dealing with this. We've seen this with Lufthansa. So across the board, you're looking at airlines looking at just lower and lower demand, and they've got to adjust their cost schedule, and that's what you're seeing with United.
And, Phil, this means people will see disruption if they're looking to schedule flights. It's the first U.S. airline to say they're going to have a reduction in domestic flights. I just wanted to point out to everybody, I mean, you're giving us this report at the White House instead of in Chicago as per usual because you were there to cover the airline CEO's meeting with the president and others today. Now, do you think they were looking for something that would have helped forestall an announcement like this? Do you think they told them, United said to them, hey, look, something like this is coming? I mean, the timing is pretty interesting.
Kelly, the meeting at the White House was called by the Coronavirus Task Force, and it was called largely because they wanted to ask the CEOs, what are the airlines doing in terms of helping us trace contacts for people who are flying, who have come in on an international flight, who may have the coronavirus so that we can say, okay, who have you had contact with? That was what the coronavirus task force was asking of the CEOs of the airlines. This United announcement was not a case of them saying, well, if we ask for something from the White House and they don't give it to us, we'll just put out this news. This news from United, 100% separate from what was going on here at the White House. And one other point, guys, you mentioned that people are looking at flight disruptions. I'm not sure how much schedule will be disrupted. Take a look at, like, the number of flights a day between Chicago O'Hare and New York LaGuardia. I'm not exactly sure how many United does. I know they have hourly service, so it may not be hourly. It may be that it's 3 or 4 hours in a row during the rush hour in the morning, and then maybe they're going to bring down the 10 a.m. flight or the 11 a.m. flight. And that will allow them to take the flights that they still have on the schedule and make those planes full.
What will happen if you have booked a flight that is canceled? Does it automatically rebook to another?
They'll put you on another flight, and that's no different than any other time. Look, I've had a number of flights we canceled where they've said, look, this particular aircraft is not going to be flying at that time, or we just don't have enough people at this time. We're going to put you in a flight 2 hours earlier or 2 hours later. I mean, that happens with all airlines.